morning, everyone. This week, of course, we are approaching Parsha's Lecha. So let's take a look. There's some interesting ideas that come out from the beginning of the Parsha. Page 54 in the Art Scroll Chumashim. Okay, we'll start reading in the Hebrew and translate. Vayomer Hashem el Avram. And God said to Avram, Lech Lecha, go for yourself. Me'artzecha, from your land. Umimolatetecha, and from your birthplace. Umibeit avicha, and from the house of your father. El haaretz asher areka, to the land that I will show you. Now, of course, we've mentioned, this is really, for all intents purposes, the beginning of Avraham's story in the Chumash, in the written Chumash. Everything else that we know about Avraham and his birth and his tests that lead up till now are recorded in the oral Torah, in the Midrashim. But here is the beginning where Avraham's story becomes, the main focus of the Torah. And as he begins his journey, to begin the formulation of the Jewish people. He becomes of course, the father of the Jewish people. And here's where it all starts. Hashem promises him in the next pasuk, if you follow my commands and you take this journey on, you'll be rewarded with the idea of becoming a great nation. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. And I will make your name great. Despite traveling in those times, to travel from one virtual world to another, where you would become a visitor or a foreigner, no one would know you. So, people it wasn't easy to gain positions of power and control in the new places. So Hashem is promising him that he'll make his name great despite his traveling to a new place, and that he would become a bracha, v'heyeh bracha, and Avram would be a bracha. Okay, so this is, of course, let's go back to the first pasuk and try to appreciate in a deeper sense what actually is going on over here. So many of the commentators want to ask, what is it necessary to mention all of these details? For example, essentially, God is telling Avram to leave home and travel without being told his final destination in order to increase the challenge and make this one of the great tests, counted as one of the 10 tests where God tests Avraham. And he says, basically, leave your land and travel. And I'm not telling you where your final destination is yet. And I'm not telling you how long you're going to be traveling. And all this is part of the test. As we've mentioned in the past, in those days, such a journey was extremely difficult. One had to take all of his possessions and manually load them onto animals and travel with them, and there was extreme danger involved, and a level of tircha, a level of difficulty and exertion that we can't even compare to. Today, to go around the world on an airplane, if you can afford first class, we can't even begin to imagine the difficulty of travel in those days. But just to get us started with a little bit of an idea of how hard this journey was for him, imagine, you're used to driving everywhere you want to go. You want to go to the makolet, you want to go to the supermarket, grab a pack of cigarettes. Of course, you shouldn't be smoking, but anyway, you go get a pack of cigarettes. Or you want a banana, an apple, if you're healthy. So you hop in the car, you go down to the corner, you pick up some stuff, you go to the supermarket. So imagine you're used to a certain, ease of travel, and one day your car is broken down. And you have, you have an infant, a young child. Everybody's hungry, everybody's thirsty, and you're stuck, and you have to take a walk now to buy some food and drink for you and for your family. And the closest supermarket or grocery store is 2 miles away. Let's just take 2 miles. You have to walk back and forth 2 miles, and for this story, let's assume you can't, your car's not going to be fixed right away. So you know that you're going to be in such a situation for at least the day or the weekend. Let's say it's a snowed-in weekend, and your car's not moving for the weekend. And if God willing, the store's open, so at least you have a store to go to buy some necessary, items. So you're not going to go and bring back 1 gallon of milk. You got to bring back milk, you got to bring back water, you got to bring back some food, whatever supplies you need. So now you take this walk for 2 miles, and you buy a good amount of things because, you need things to last you for the whole 2-3 days. And then you have to schlep them back. What kind of journey is that? You're gonna curse the day it snowed. But anyway, just to give you an idea, just to go to the supermarket on foot and pick up a few things, you'd realize what exertion and what difficulties are involved in travel. So imagine this times 1,000 in his day, to travel with all of his possessions on foot, or on horses or mules, and again with all of the things and all of the danger involved in traveling in those days. When it became dark, it became pitch black. You had to find a secure place to rest. Let's not even begin to imagine. Anyway, this is basically to start get an idea of the difficult test that Avraham was asked in this stage of his life. In any event, aside from that point, we want to understand, why is it necessary to mention all of these details? Why is he being told to leave his land, his birthplace, and his father's house? Which, to be honest with you, is in reverse order. Truthfully speaking, the place closest to a person is his home. Then you could talk about his hometown, and then the country that he's from, his land, his Medina. So it's also in reverse order when you think of it. We're talking external, your country, then your hometown, and then your home. So why is it in reverse order as well? We want to hopefully get a chance to appreciate. So for this discussion, we're going to we're going to take a little bit of an out-of-the-box approach, keeping in mind more of the concepts that are spoken about in Kabbalah and Hasidut, to give almost a new face to this whole Parsha. And we'll begin with explaining what it means to be from a particular place, from one's land. Leaving a person's country, leaving a person's land, is interesting. The Rambam explains in Hilchot Deot that a person is affected by his environment. And he goes so far as to say that if a righteous person, a person at least that aspires to be righteous, finds himself surrounded by wicked people in a city, in a country of people that are wicked, he should go as far as running away and hiding and living in a cave in order to avoid the negative effects of this wicked environment. The truth is, Avraham Avinu was really the first person we see in the Torah that fights against the wickedness of his land. Avraham was in a place of idol worship, a place of extreme wickedness, and he began to preach and speak out aggressively against these ways of life. And for that reason it's for that reason that he was singled out and taken prisoner and actually attempted to execute. They attempted to execute him for his beliefs and his outward approach in speaking against the ways of his land. So the person's land has an effect on the average person, that a person he submits to a large degree to what he sees around him. Just take a look. One of the phenomenons in the world is, for example, fashion. Fashion is, it changes from time to time, and if you're off by just a few beats, so you look ridiculous, and everyone else looks cool, Or if you're ahead of your time, you might be deemed the weirdo, and you're just ahead of your time. And it's funny, when you look at old pictures, it really comes out more than in the current times. For example, everybody that is following a certain style, a hairstyle, let's say, or a particular clothing fashion. So what do you see? You see that everybody walks around with the idea that they look great. When you look at an old picture from a few years ago, you ask yourself, what was I thinking? What was I thinking with that outfit? Or what was I thinking with that hairstyle? Women, for sure. Women are like, oh, don't show me that picture. But what was she insane 5 years ago when she actually worked for an hour to make her hair look like that? So it's interesting enough, we can almost see the underlying insanity in hairstyles and fashion. Pants, it's funny, even I just went and bought a suit on vacation. There's a time where pant legs are supposed to be wider. And now it's, no, pant legs have to be very narrow at the bottom. Cuff them, don't cuff them. All this is ridiculous. And what is this a result of? Honestly, it's a result of a concentrated effort, a collective agreement on what we consider to be fashionable and stylish. Now, that's just in one area. Now, and who cares? At the end of the day, whether you wear wide pants with cuffs, or narrow pants without cuffs, who cares? You're not hurting or building the world that way. You might be making the fashion designer rich, but you're not doing anything more than that. What about the more personal ideas and moral concepts that become ingrained within us because of a particular environment that we live in? In America, it's pasnished. It's nice, for America we use a Yiddish term. It's pasnished to see a friend, a colleague, and not smile and say hello and give a, in certain in communities in certain countries, for example, South America, everybody's very kissy, very huggy and kissy. My wife tells me that, I know from other friends that you give of course a hug and a kiss on two cheeks, one cheek. That's normal. Without that, it's rude. So now imagine you're a religious person, or you're just a shy person, or you want to try to maintain a level of morality where you're not kissing all these women you meet because you love your wife and your wife is very jealous. Forget about religion. Let's leave religion out of it. Your wife is extremely jealous, and if you give everybody a formal hug and kiss, she's going to want to divorce you. So you have to tell everybody that, listen, I'm sorry, I don't hug and kiss women, and you become the weirdo. When is that so weird that you don't want to hug and kiss all these women that you happen to come across? It's ridiculous. So what's normal? What's not normal? I don't know, since this is a Torah discourse, maybe we can go to a little bit of an extreme. It's maybe not the most politically correct topic to talk about today, unfortunately, but in this format and form, we will talk about it. What is normal? What is not normal? I had an email sent to me where a particular organization that usually has very, moral causes, that they're trying to help people that are being victimized or injustice. So it sent me an email that a particular country in Africa decided that homosexual behavior is wrong and illegal in that country. And this person was sending an email representing this organization that's usually trying to help victims of injustice, like in an outrage. How could this be? How could a country determine that love is illegal? A person should be able to love who he wants and be with who he wants. And we have to stop this injustice. And I said to myself, in prior emails, I was certainly in agreement with the message, and I actually signed on to the cause. And this time I'm saying, what? It's a misguided effort to try to help. You want to help, but here now your whole outlook on life is so corrupt, so warped, that you're trying to fight against something that the actual Torah says is wrong. So how unjust is this country's judicial system's verdict? Happens to be, in this case, they actually got it right. They may be not a Jewish government, for sure it wasn't a Jewish government, but whatever the government was, they actually they were able to, on their own decision, agree with what the Bible says. And now you want to, and an outraged from what happened, you want to then come and fight and call them terrible, wicked, evil people because they deemed homosexuality to be illegal? Well, wake up, lady. It is illegal. The Torah has said it from 4,000 years ago. And from creation, one of the first sins of man, talked about in Parsha Noach. And even earlier, according to the Midrashim, is when the world corrupted its ways, was part of its homosexuality, was part of the corruption of the world. So anyway, all this is really for us to appreciate and understand that a person's intellectual approach to life, his moral approach to life, even his emotional approach to life is all subjective. It becomes a product of the environment that he's grown up in. What becomes normal to you is what becomes normal in your environment. And the first thing a person has to be willing to, and even in most cases actually do, especially today in our Baal Tshuva movement, where many secular Americans decide that they want to become in touch with their Jewish roots, they don't realize that those few initial steps lead them to an entire life change, which means shifting one's moral and ethical guidelines from A to Z. And that's what we see in this first request from Avram to leave your land. Disconnect from the biases that you've been raised with and this subjective right and wrong, and detach from that, because you're meant to reach an essential truth that is a part of God's divine wisdom, not what we've all decided is comfortable for us today, and of course switches tomorrow. 50 years ago, to be homosexual in America was shunned upon, was looked down upon. Today, if you would be a politician and say that you believe in heterosexuality, you forget it, your political career would be ruined. So where is the world going? Well, we realize when you take a close look, it's going whatever direction it feels like going, in whatever time period you want to analyze it. It's like a pinball in a pinball machine. So that's the first goal. And we see in the beginning of this week's Parsha, which is really the beginning of the story of the Jewish people, of course with Avram, the eventual father of the Jewish people, the first move is to break away from the false realities that we've been convinced of because of our environment. Step 2, the next stage in this spiritual journey, is to go out from your birthplace. What's a birthplace? So obviously it means, in a simple sense, your hometown, where you were born, physically. But there's a spiritual birthplace as well. What's a spiritual birthplace? A spiritual birthplace is the nature, the spiritual nature that one is born with. People are born with sometimes a tendency to anger, sometimes a tendency to indulge in pleasure, a tendency to be lazy. All of these attributes, these are more spiritual attributes that make up a person, is how he's born. The Gemara says that God made righteous and God made wicked. Right? It brings a quote from a pasuk, Barata tzadikim barata rashaim. The truth is, God does not make a righteous person or a wicked person. That's decided ultimately through a person's free choice. So what does it mean that God made righteous and wicked? So the explanation of that Gemara is that God creates people with stronger tendencies toward being wicked and stronger tendencies towards being righteous. Ultimately, we have our free choice to decide at the end, but there are tendencies that we are born with. It's not our doing. It's also a result of our parents. We inherit from our parents certain attributes. So that's what it means in a spiritual sense, being of one's birthplace. The next step that the Torah asks of all of us, and really we follow in Avram's footsteps, is to leave that birthplace. If God made a person with a particular spiritual weakness, for example, he gets very angry very easily, he's not supposed to say, well, that's how God made me, that's how I'll live the rest of my life. And even worse than that, a person can take the nature that he's been given and increase it. So if a person has, let's say, a 5% anger level, he can, after 20, 30 years, become a 50%. He can come up to 90% anger. He can become a person that's starting fights, even, killing people. The nature, for example, the anger level that you're born with, you have to work on to decrease. If you don't, then it'll naturally increase a little bit. And if someone is very aggressive in pursuing his anger, it can become out of control. That's why, unfortunately, some people are in jail today. They can't control their anger. So the second step, again, is to leave one's birthplace. That means that you must work on your spiritual nature that you've been given and in refining it and making it better. Once a person's emotional emotional outlook and his attributes, his midot are going to be worked on, he has a better chance of seeing reality instead of seeing the things that he wants to see. A person that wants to feed his pleasure will manipulate his life view to fit what he wants. A person wants to be a ladies' man, so he'll certainly justify whatever lifestyle will be conducive to him having a good time. A person is into other things. Whatever he's into, he will justify the means to the end that he wants. It won't be an objective right and wrong. It'll be a right and wrong that really suits what he wants. So the second thing we must break away from in order to really reach truth is that spiritual makeup that we have, which will create certain biases. Okay, so that's leaving one's land and leaving one's birthplace. Finally, we must leave the house of our father. What does it mean in this context to leave the house of one's father? So, Chachma is called Av. Chachma is called the father of all things because everything that eventually will exist within a person is a result of his original machshava, his thought and his wisdom. Wisdom gives birth to all things. The first sphira, the first attribute, divine attribute, is Chachma. As it says in the pasuk, Reishit Chochma, the beginning of things is wisdom. And here too, the Beis Avicha, the house of one's father, is really symbolic of the limited house is a compartmentalized area, the limited wisdom of a person since it's based on one's land and one's birthplace. Meaning, finally, the third step here is really the result of the first two steps. If one goes out of his homeland, his land and his birthplace, then he has a chance to also break free from the Beis Avicha, which is this limited mindset, this limited life view, and he has a chance to see truth and reality. And that's why the final step in this pasuk is that if you leave your homeland and you leave your birthplace, then you will see the land that God wants to show you. Which is meaning what? Meaning that until now, the land you have seen is the land you wanted to see. If you want a particular friend because he's going to be good for you, you want to befriend this person because he's going to help you get a job. So this person is great. He's your best friend. And the person that you don't have any interest with, you don't want to be his friend. All of a sudden, he's not interesting. You don't like him. Everything you want is going to determine what you see. But if you break out of all those biases, then the end result is that you'll be able to see the land that God shows you, which means what? That you'll see the reality of all things. Because really, what is this world? This world is God's creation. That means whatever God had in mind when He created this world, that is the true reality of this world. And when we get out of the picture and work to just see what God put here, then we see truth. You know, Adam, before he sinned, named everything that exists in the world. All the animals came before him and he gave them all names. And Adam, by virtue of his neshama, his soul, was able to perceive the true reality of all things. Because the names he gave each thing was rooted in its spiritual essence. So if Adam was able to call a lion an aryeh in Hebrew, it's because he saw that what is that creature in front of him? Spiritually, it's an aryeh. And so too with all things in life. And that level of clarity comes from being absolutely connected to the divine communication that exists in this world. And this is what Avraham comes to restore. He has to break out of the limited, confused darkness of this world and reconnect with divine communication that existed and still exists. And once he accomplished that, he was able to truly see the world for what it really was. And we, his descendants, are really meant to follow in his footsteps. A lot of the work has been done. We inherit a divine soul by virtue of Abraham's hard work. We have to take that and work with it and continue. And our goal should be, and what we see in this week's Parsha is, our goal should be to work to see the world that God created, not the world that we want to recreate to fit ourselves. And that's one of the messages that we can find in here, that it says to go to the land that God will show us. We should all merit, in our lives, even in an individual sense. It doesn't have to be, a home run every time, but we should merit at least to the clarity to see that we're on God's path and that we're utilizing the things that He gives us and our situations that we come across in our daily life and in this world for good, to fulfill the divine will and to do for our purpose in this world, which is mainly, of course, to repair all of the damage that we see in front of us in order to perfect the world that we should merit coming of Mashiach, and will be returned back with all of the great ancestors of old, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and all of the tzaddikim in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi b'mehera b'yameinu. Amen. Have a good day, everyone.